Good evening. The opinions and statements voiced by our guests do not necessarily reflect the opinions of this network. Enjoy the shows.
You are listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, Birmingham, Alabama.
Headline edition, July 8, 1947. The Army Air Forces has announced that a flying disc has been found and is now in the possession of the Army. Army officers say the missile, found sometime last week, has been inspected at Roswell, New Mexico, and sent to Wright Field, Ohio, for further inspection.
Now, historic films made in the spring of 1948 and just released show Eniwetok preparing for heavily guarded and still largely secret tests of new atomic weapons. The test's purpose is to measure atomic effects on thousands of different materials, 30,000 tons of them, not, as at Bikini, to prove military effectiveness.
San Francisco police say that 9 persons have been arrested in a narcotics raid on the headquarters of the Grateful Dead, a widely popular singing group. 2 members of the group, Rod McKernan and Robert Weir, and their business manager, Danny Rifkin, have been booked on suspicion of possessing narcotics.
3, 2, 1, 0. All engine running. Liftoff. We have a liftoff. 32 minutes past the hour. Liftoff on Apollo 11. Tower cleared.
We got a roll program. Neil Armstrong reporting the roll and pitch program, which puts Apollo 11 on a proper heading.
I'm going to step off the limb now. That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
Well, strange lights are causing a viral buzz on YouTube. Could we have caught extraterrestrial activity on a recent newscast? Brandon Arroyo investigates.
As the newscast ended, the controversy began back on September 26th. What is that light shining in the back of the dark night sky?
With coverage reaching all the way back to 1948, for over 70 years, Fate magazine has brought you reports of the strange and unknown, all of them true. Now, Fate Magazine Radio is carrying on that tradition of setting the standard in paranormal talk radio as we report and discuss some of the most mysterious and perplexing phenomena imaginable in this strange world of ours. Now, here is your host of Fate Magazine Radio, Kat Hobson.
Good evening. Welcome to Fate Mag Radio, the online voice of Fate Magazine, and I am so proud to be your host, the voice of Fate as it were, Kat Hobson. I am very much looking forward to tonight's show because I'm curious and I'm nosy. And after seeing and hearing and reading about John Edmonds' property, the Stardust Ranch, I wanted to go to the source. And I'm going to tell you that what I have learned in the course of this research and through John's writing, he has written a really nifty book with Brian McDonald, and the title is Stardust Ranch, The Incredible True Story. I have never understood places like this. I've been to a couple of different anomalously known locations. Nothing like this. And just so you know, John is the on-air talent and producer at Adventures into the Strange. He is CEO and founder of Stardust Ranch Incorporated. He's been a therapist and social worker with the Behavioral and Health Services building. Gracious, I guess you went in one. But at any rate, John is someone that I have greatly enjoyed talking with over some time and whose book I absolutely was enthralled by. So, John Edmonds, I am so glad that you're here. Thank you for joining me.
Oh, well, thank you for having me on. And I've got to correct something up front. Brian is really Bruce.
Oh, my goodness. I have called him Brian for 2 weeks, and I got it right in the bio, but I did not here. My apologies to Brian, also known as Bruce. Yes. So, or Bruce, also known as Brian. We can go that either way. But he did do a fantastic. Oh, do not. It's just one of those things that, I've been very excited about this show because I've enjoyed our conversations and you're educating me on some of the things that happened out there. We've had a couple. And when I was reading the book, it really is funny because most of the time I could tell when it was you and when it was Bruce. And I really liked how he interjected himself into parts of it. So, yeah, he said, yeah, I'm not supposed to be here, but I think that he might even understand and want to go by Brian in the future. So, who knows? But
yeah, he'll find that funny, I'm sure.
But now you have, and I have to ask if this was before or after you bought the ranch, your study of astrophysics at Northwestern.
Well, it was long before. I graduated high school in 1977, but I was one of those kids. I'm an only child, and I was one of those kids that I had a voracious appetite to learn anything and everything that I could possibly learn growing up.
Right.
And astronomy and physics and all the sciences, they seemed like the path to kind of like unlock the universe for me. And so I just really sucked it up. I had my entire high school education finished literally by the time I was 15. And so my school system, they didn't want to pay for me to go to school any further. And I'd already done all the AP testing and everything and passed out of that. So I ended up having to go ahead and file an action against the district in order to get them to allow me to go to Northwestern University and pay for it. And I succeeded at that. And
congratulations. That was wonderful.
I had, 2.5 years of college done by the time everybody else was graduating.
Well, that's a terrific thing. And our local school system where my children graduated did have AP, but they went ahead and let them get into collegiate classes as well once they finished their basic academics. So you must have been precedent setting, and I appreciate that.
I was really lucky. Dr. Heineck, of great fame, he actually taught at Northwestern University. My mother attended there, and she actually had him as a professor. And then later on, he set up the UFO investigation program that was on Chicago Avenue in Evanston. So I grew up like less than 5 miles away from that. And, I used to go over there, every week and hang out and just bug him. And eventually, he would let me come in and sweep and do little chores and stuff like that in return for me being able to just kind of like be the fly on the wall and hear and see all the stuff that was going on. And so, I was introduced, to the whole UFO situation and ET and all that very early.
Well, then did you go into, you didn't know the history or the experiences on your ranch before you bought it, did you? Because it seemed like you were surprised.
I had no idea. Yeah, no, I had no idea. In fact, the thing about it is that when I was, hanging out with at the ufology center, it was purely just, curiosity. But it wasn't like I had this tremendous belief system or that I was driven to, go into this or anything else. It was far from it. I mean, I was, kind of your typical, Illinois high school kid that, was into, girls and fast cars and, hanging out and listening to rock music. I had very little interest in anything to do with the paranormal.
Well, I find that so interesting then that you were actually under his wing, as it were. And obviously, Project Blue Book was finished at that time. But, his interest, because of the information that he garnered during that, had to still be extreme.
Well, Close Encounters was going on, and so I had a chance to, kind of, just like I said, be the fly on the wall. I mean, I got to look at a lot of, photos and things like that. And I had a teacher that was just a wonderful teacher at Evanston Township High School, named Dr. Delaria, who passed away many, many years ago. But he was friends with Dr. Hynek. And so they used to do dinners together. And so I used to get to hang out and have dinner with these guys like once a week. and they would sit there and talk about all the open cases and talk about everything that was happening. And I would just sit there and, look at them and kind of go, wow, this is kind of cool. I mean, if any of this stuff's real, it's, amazing.
Well, so now I don't think you put an if in front of that anymore, do you?
Oh, no, not anymore. I mean, not after all the encounters, not after all the firefights, not after seeing the portals open and things that come through them. No, not at all. I mean, in fact, everything for me about this ranch has been sort of like a on-the-job training, program. Not that I ever would have chosen it if I'd known what I was going to go through or what my poor wife would go through. But it is what it is. You sometimes you just get thrown into situations and you have to figure out whether to, what you can do to make the best out of them. And that's what I've tried to do.
Well, I think you've done incredibly well at that. Just putting that out there, because I was actually shocked at some of the situations you found yourself in. And when you decided that you were going to buy this ranch, and you both were there, and the story of the young man there, why did you not? I mean, I understand that you were under contract, you bought this house, you were moving into it. Money does not grow on trees, and neither do really great ranches. So, which you still thought this to be. So when you started having the experiences, and they were extreme from the get-go, right?
They were.
Then, how did you find the fortitude to stay and cope with that?
Part of it was just extreme anger. I had seen this ranch as this was the embodiment of a dream that I'd had as a kid about having horses, and kind of, it was, sort of my opportunity to live what I'd watched on TV growing up as a kid in Chicago. And then, I thought, man, I'm going to get out there and have horses, and, it's going to be the old West, and it's going to be pretty cool. And then all of a sudden, I ended up running into all these paranormal experiences. And I thought, no, this is definitely not part of my dream. This is, cowboys and aliens, not,
not what you were anticipating in the least.
Exactly. This is on a different channel.
This is, well, it actually, you talked about seeing vortexes opening, portals opening. So, are you convinced by that that these are all interdimensional?
Well, I think, it's kind of a big conversation. What I'm convinced of at this point is that there are different dimensions, many different dimensions. Humans only have the ability to be able to perceive a very narrow bandwidth of as far as their perception goes, with very narrow skills. And so we're in a position where, probably 98% of everything that happens and goes on, we don't even pick up on it. I mean, it just kind of goes on its merry way, and the two never meet unless they cross paths for some reason. Well, it just happens to be that when you live in a place like Rainbow Valley and Stardust Ranch, you got at least a minimum of 2 big portals here. And so things kind of cross paths fairly regularly. And, you don't have a choice. I mean, it enters into your perceptual, frequency. You're going to see things and experience things. And at one point, we actually had some investigators that came out that were people that were very sophisticated in terms of their scientific knowledge. And they brought special equipment out here. And when they turned it on, the entire ranch looked like Swiss cheese. I mean, I was afraid to walk because
Holy wow.
There were portals everywhere. Some of them were little tiny things that look like you could put a quart of, water in. But it was just, they were everywhere. It was shocking. It was very unnerving. And they recorded all that. And after about a week of, looking at things, they packed up their stuff and went back to California.
That was it?
Well, I mean, I have stayed in touch with one of the people off and on, but everybody comes out and they check stuff out and everything, and they get great results, but then we never end up getting proof of anything. People say, "Oh yeah, we'll give you a copy of what we have done," but they don't do it. What are you going to do? Sue them? I mean,
well, you don't have much recourse, do you?
No, you really don't. I mean, it's like, you're going to go into a court of law and say, hey, these investigators were here and they did all this amazing stuff and they promised us that they were going to give us this, and then they never did. They're just going to laugh at you, and that's the end of the case.
Well, I tell you,
so we
it's
do
just not
everything
right,
on
right?
intention. No, it isn't. But you know what? We do everything on good heart and good intention. We're out here, trying to make a difference in terms of everything that we do. If people are serious and they have background and they can prove to us that, they're not just a bunch of, looky-loos, we'll let them come out and study the place. We've had to be very careful, though, because a lot of times when some of these different individuals or teams or whatever have come out, they do stir things up. And then when they're gone, we got to deal with all the consequences. And the consequences are not pretty. And so, there's a difference between living in a place that's, full of all these various different things going on, and then actually going out and kicking the hornet's nest regularly and trying to stir them up. We're not trying to do that. We're just trying to, live and let live.
Well, I appreciate that you let them come, period, because I think anything that was going to start some of the activity that you shared would not be something I wanted to allow to happen. I mean, some of the things that have happened are horrific.
They're brutal.
And, it's affected, you physically, your wife physically, your animals physically. I mean, it's almost like a never-ending story. And I don't think that I would want to jeopardize any tranquility I could find by letting someone in.
We're damned if we do and damned if we don't. I mean, for years, I never talked to anybody about it. I tried to keep it, a secret. I tried to, just pretend like everything was cool and keep a smile on my face and the whole works. I went through many years of being a counselor, and at night I'd go home and all this stuff would happen. I'd have to be back at work at 8:00 in the morning the next day, ready to see, clients and pretend like nothing happened, and I finally just got to the point where I said, at some point, John, you've got to just do the right thing and just resign and make this your full-time deal at the ranch if you're going to keep doing this. Part of it was trying to be responsible professionally and always try to do the best thing for the clients, but an awful lot of it was the fact that my life was being shredded every time I go home, and I just couldn't face coming back to work the next day and pretending like nothing happened. So it's been very difficult.
Well, we have to take our first break, and we'll be right back. And I do have some questions for you about the portals, because dimensions fascinate me. So we will be back. Y'all come back too.
You are listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, Birmingham, Alabama.
Oh, come on. I'm Southern, but... nope.
That'll do. Hello, I am Kat Hobson, host of Paranormal Experience here on WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. I enjoy having guests from all areas of the paranormal, from ghosts to ufology to cryptids and beyond. You'll find some of the best researchers in their fields bringing you some great information. Join me on Wednesday nights from 8 to 10 p. Eastern here on WBHM Digital Broadcasting.
You are listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, the best in paranormal talk, only on Paranormal Experience Radio. Broadcasting live out of Birmingham, Alabama. Since 1948, Fate Magazine has brought you reports of the strange and unknown, all of them true. Fate Radio is carrying on that tradition, bringing you the unusual, macabre, strange, and bizarre. Join host Kat Hobson Sunday nights from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern on WBHM Digital Broadcasting. You are listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, the best in paranormal talk, only on Paranormal Experience Radio, broadcasting live out of Birmingham, Alabama.
This is Jason Bland, host of Midwest Paranormal Presents Paranormal Soup, where we stream live as a webcast every Sunday night, 11 p.m. to 2 a.m. Eastern, with guests who will blow your mind. Live ghost box sessions where you can call into the show to see if the spirits will talk to you, and the World Wide Web of Weird with the latest in paranormal news and evidence. We're bringing the weird every Sunday night, 11 p.m. to 2 a.m. Eastern on our Facebook page and YouTube channel. Don't forget to follow and subscribe.
Thank you for listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. The time is 23 minutes after the hour. Welcome back to Fate Mag Radio, the online voice of Fate Magazine. I'm so glad that you're here. I'm Kat Hobson, your host, and my guest tonight is John Edmonds, and he is the CEO and founder of Stardust Ranch. I am thrilled to be having this conversation because when I started researching a little bit about his location, I was really enthused to learn more because it's something that I think is fascinating. And John, I didn't tell you that one of the reasons that I was so immersed in this is that a friend of mine in the Southeast has located a place that's not dissimilar to yours, except nobody's living on it. So it's it's still open land and it still has all these bizarre happenings on it. Nothing like yours, I guess, because nobody's there 24/7. But I'm always amazed when separate locations have so much anomalous activity. But yours is just, I think yours is probably the strongest activity that in my research I've come across. And I'm sure living in it, you would agree.
Well, and the whole thing is this, and that is there are lots of locations of different things happening. But as I had explained to me by somebody that knows about these things, the portals that we have are not just capable of transferring matter, from point A to point B. Apparently, there are only a couple of locations on the planet that are capable of not only transferring the matter, but transferring it through time. Okay. And so literally that's why we see such weird stuff. And that is we see things from the past. We had Roman soldiers walk through our living room during a complete, power.
Okay. That blew me away. That blew me away.
Blew us away too.
No doubt. No doubt. But it's just, I don't know. It just was something that I was completely unprepared for when I came across that. And
well,
I thought,
it sounds crazy.
This
a
is
lot
different.
Of this stuff it sounds crazy, but it is what it is.
Yeah, it is.
I can't make it up. It's I'm as bizarre as all these things sound. They happened. There are witnesses. Right. There are other people that are witnesses to other things. We had the portal in the house open up, and we had somebody from ancient Egypt connected to a lady friend of ours that was here talking to us. And you could smell the various different smells that were available in ancient Egypt. Various different types of flowers and things. And our friend knew those. Apparently, she knows enough about that kind of thing to be able to track down and find out what plants they were. And they were specific to that Nile region.
Were they currently specific to that?
I don't know that. Honestly, I can't say I remember that because it happened a few years ago. But what she was able to do was historically date them as being, from several thousand years ago.
That is so nifty. Well,
and we've had just all sorts of things where we've, the portals opened and we could clearly see, places in Europe, that were time dated to just, a long, long time ago. Just, like Romans during the Roman period, like I said earlier, but then also back to the Vikings. Just crazy stuff, and it'll be things like where, we'll have people that are visiting and we'll go out to get pizza or something for everybody and come back and everybody's sitting around with their eyes as big as saucers. and we ask them what's going on and they're like, you're not going to believe this. And I'm like, it's Stardust Ranch. You'd be surprised what I'm going to believe. Well, this portal thing, whatever it is, all of a sudden it looked like it had all these little light dots coming out of it. And the next thing you know, we saw all these ETs and we had all these weird smells and we had all these weird sounds. And they're scared to death. They're literally sitting there, like they just about had been in a horrible car accident or something. They're just sweating bullets and they're absolutely scared to death. And I'm like, oh God, here we go again. It's very hard to have a normal life in the middle of all this.
I can only imagine. Truly. I would, there's a part of me sitting here saying, man, I would love to see this. And then there's another part of me going, are you crazy? Do not ever ask him if you can come out there. Do not do that. But yet, at the end of the day, I'm going to wind up asking you if I can come out there. But it's still just maybe. But it's
Well,
one of those things that, I am preparing myself to do this kind of research. And but to think, it's like you and your friends, your friends know that this stuff is happening there, right? Yet, when they actually saw it, it was beyond their capability to really cope with very well, it sounds like. I
well,
think
in
most
this
people would be like
particular
that.
case, yeah, in this particular case, they were terrified because they said the whole room, they ended up surrounded by
Mm-hmm.
grays. And, there's one thing to hear a story and, kind of envision it occurring. There's another
Right.
thing to have it just literally suddenly come to life and have it real, like right in front of you.
In your face.
And I think that's the big thing about a lot of this for people. I mean, we've had, famous musicians that came out and, they were totally digging on the place and having a great time and hanging out. And then about, I don't know, 10 o'clock at night, it started raining real bad. We had a horrible monsoon storm. Next thing I know, this guy is beating on my door and my windows outside, screaming at the top of his lungs to come inside, absolutely terrified. I wake up, go out there because I pretty much go to bed early because I get up so early for the animals.
Right.
And, this guy is just standing there shaking, just absolutely scared to death. And he goes, "It's all real, man. I saw it myself. It's all real." And I'm like, "Yeah." And he's like, "I need to leave." And he literally walks in, grabs his stuff, gets in his truck, and almost drives through my front gates.
Oh,
literally
wow.
like without even opening them because he's so terrified. And, this is the kind of stuff that happens. I mean, we try to be really careful about who we let come out here. We always say to
Exactly.
everybody, please be grounded. And by grounded, what we're saying is that, please don't be like going through any extreme emotional changes or state of mind or anything, in your personal life before you come out here. Because when you get out here, if you are, this place seems to really make it a lot worse. It seems to just amp up all the emotional stuff and just, cause real problems for people. And, we've even had people that were very grounded, people that were, producers, in Hollywood that came out with teams to do stuff. And, after they'd been here for 4 or 5 hours, they were terrified. I mean, they were literally scared to death.
Well, that's surprising because I've worked with a team that did paranormal television, and they were, it just seemed matter of fact, cut and dried. They were not startled by any of the experiences one of the actors was. But other than that, the production staff and team did not really respond. So if you got one of those groups on edge, then they got a lot more than they were anticipating.
Well, we were actually, during this particular episode of the show, we were, made to leave the property and stay in town while they did their filming. And the next day, when we came back, or I came back, my wife went straight to work. I came back to the ranch. I was back on the ranch by like 6:30 in the morning. And I was just sitting around having coffee. And I look at the monitor on my screen, on my computer, and there's a woman climbing over my fence. And I'm like, now what?
In or out?
So, I walk outside, and she comes up the front path from the gates. And I said, "Can I help you with something?" And she goes, "Oh, I'm from so-and-so, and I was with a team that was here working last night, and I left a big bag of camera gear here." And I said, "Really? Do you know where you left it?" And she goes, "No. Could we look for it?" And I said, "Sure." So we go in the house. I find the bag of camera gear. Nice gear, too. And I said, "Well, here it is." And she goes, "Oh, thank God, my life's in this. I've got to have it back." And I said, "No problem." And I said, "Did you guys actually get any cool footage of anything?" And she goes, "Yeah." And I said, well, can you tell me about it? And she goes, well, I'm not really supposed to. And I said, well, can you tell me anyway? And, she tells me about the fact that when they were filming, they had a remote setup in a trailer away from the ranch a little bit so that they could, kind of like have everything working, but not actually kind of like, have all that equipment and stuff part of the shot. Right. And what ended up happening was that a flying saucer came down about 40 feet over the house and began to interact with them, and they caught the whole thing on film.
How cool.
Yeah, and I mean, when they released the episode on TV for this particular show, absolutely nothing was included about that. The most important thing that happened during the whole shoot, and it wasn't even included. And I thought to myself, wow,
that's unreal.
Yeah, it's really disappointing, because what that pointed out to me is that, there's a lot of judgment, value judgments about what's cool and what's important and what should be released to the public and what shouldn't. And, that would have, I'm sure that would have been like the ultimate all-time, release, which would have been shown, hundreds and hundreds of times everywhere, but they didn't even bother to release the information.
That's astounding. I wonder if that is because of the nature of governmental attitudes and such toward that. I mean, because that's obviously raw footage that would have been, tough to debunk, tough to verify, but not so much if you start looking at timestamps and stuff. But
they had 3 cameras going, so they had, they were multiple. In a position where, they had multiple images. Not only that, but from what I understood, the person that reported all this to me, I mean, she no sooner got back to her home location and she was dismissed, never to return to the company again.
Really?
So I don't even know how that information that she had shared with me ever got back to them, unless she reported it to them or something. I don't know. But I mean, she got like blackballed after that.
That's bizarre. I wonder how they did know.
I don't know. I've always thought to myself, maybe, who knows? Maybe we're bugged or something. I have no way of knowing anything. I mean, I just live here.
Right. Then, was that a paranormal show?
Yes.
Like, ghosts and goblins and such?
Yep, pretty much.
Okay. Then, has more than one paranormal show been there?
We've had several different. I mean, we've had, we get a lot of offers to do things, but
sure.
I'm pretty selective about what I choose, because, I want to protect the reputation of the ranch.
Absolutely.
And at the same time, what I don't want to do is be part of something that's fake. It's like, I understand it's Hollywood. I understand a lot of it's up to, interpretation and all that kind of thing. But the bottom line is that I will not ever willingly take part in anything that is fake. It's like, I'm just not going to do it. I mean, it's hard enough, coping with all the bad stuff that's happened here. But then to have, any kind of question outright that, we participated in something fake, I won't have any part of it.
Well, I would be very offended if somebody came to my location that had so much to offer and felt the need to fake something because they were afraid of what might really be there.
Well, we've had offers. I mean, we've had offers to make things bigger than what they were. And I said, no, we're not going to do that. It's if you don't get it, you don't get it. Sorry, you wasted your time and money, but, too bad.
But if you do get it, you're golden.
If you get it, it's golden.
Yeah. Well, I find that paranormal investigation teams even will make their experiences or evidence a little jazzier than, we sat in a room in the dark for about 6 hours talking to ourselves with nobody answering. That doesn't sound very sexy, right? I mean, we got there and it was off the chain and this and this and this. Well, then there you go. So I don't get that either, because the reality may not be sexy, but it's just part of doing the job, and that's how you get to the evidence.
Well, I have a little different perspective, and that is that, all the problems we have right now with us believing the government when they tell us about all the things they tell us or don't tell us.
Right.
The reason our relationship with the government got that way was because of the fact that they weren't straight with us from the get-go. And, TV shows, if they start doing that kind of thing and start manipulating the evidence and start, jazzing it up, as you say, to make it sound better than it is, they're just going to create the same relationship with the audience that we have with the government, and that means that nobody knows what's true and what's not true. And we got nothing. I mean, from a cultural perspective, we're never going to get any further in understanding this phenomena unless we have, a really, strong moral commitment to telling the truth.
Yes. And that's a very hot commodity and tough to find.
Exactly.
Oh, well, we have a question for you, but we only have about a minute and a half before we go to break, so I'm going to save that. But I'm interested when the woman came back, came back and told you that this had happened, then, you see craft there all the time. Was there something that she felt was so bizarre about what they got that it would have frightened them from running it?
Well, I think part of it was the fact that they were in the process of reenacting an experience that my wife had in the master bedroom where she was almost abducted. And during that experience, this actor or actress, she experienced some bruising that was, it was portrayed as bruising and marks on her body to try to align with the actual story of the truth that happened to my wife. Well, the next day, this woman she looked like somebody taking her out and gang beating her. I mean, she had, marks all over her. She looked, it was bad. And I think that, again, was more physical proof. And I think it was just way more than what they ever expected to see. Sure.
Well, we are going to take this break, and then I'm going to ask this question. And, I am having a great time, John. Thank you for being so open. You always are, but
Thank you.
Obviously. But we'll be right back, and y'all be sure and come back too.
You're listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, the best in paranormal talk, only on Paranormal Experience Radio, broadcasting live out of Birmingham, Alabama.
Oh, come on. I'm Southern, but... Nope.
That'll do. Hello. I am Kat Hobson, host of Paranormal Experience here on WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. I enjoy having guests from all areas of the paranormal, from ghosts to ufology to cryptids and beyond. You'll find some of the best researchers in their fields bringing you some great information. Join me on Wednesday nights from 8 to 10 p. Eastern here on WBHM Digital Broadcasting.
Since 1948, Fate magazine has brought you reports of the strange and unknown, all of them true. Fate Radio is carrying on that tradition, bringing you the unusual, macabre, strange, and bizarre. Join host Kat Hobson Sunday nights from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern on WBHM Digital Broadcasting.
listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, the best in paranormal talk, only on Paranormal Experienced Radio, broadcasting live out of Birmingham, Alabama.
Welcome back to Fate Mag Radio, the online voice of Fate Magazine. I am so glad that you're here because my guest tonight is just fantastic, and he is the owner and founder of Stardust Ranch. John Edmonds, I'm so glad that you're here, and we had to go to break, but I still have a question for you. And I always tell people that one of these days people are going to start sharing those breaks, because sometimes the information and conversation is the better part of the show that happens in the breaks, or at least the build up to stuff. And I always, finish that statement with, and it's not going to be me, but because I do like to talk between our breaks. But I was wanting to get this question. April wants to know, does the government, or has the government gotten involved there?
Oh, yeah. I mean,
tell them about the men.
I'm sorry,
in the gate.
Say again?
Tell them about the men in the gate. That flipped me out.
Are we talking about when we first moved in, or
yes.
which? Okay.
The men,
yeah.
And then the other.
Well, I mean, the very first week that we moved in, we had a gentleman that, we were starting to unpack our stuff, and we had a guy that has affectionately become known as the Machete Man, walk up the front path to the house. This is before we actually had big gates that I put up out front for obvious reasons. And literally this guy was probably in his, late 40s, early 50s, long hair, wearing a cut-off army shirt. And he had this long machete kind of thing with a piece of leather tied to it. And he was just kind of he had it out in front of him, and he was just kind of, strolling down the path, moving the machete back and forth. And I thought, man, this is weird. And, so I had, before this, I hadn't really been much of a gun guy, but I had decided that if I was going to live in the middle of, BFE, it was time to go buy a gun. And so I had picked up a 357. And I took that 357 revolver and put it down the back of my pants, pulled my shirt down over it, and walked outside, thinking to myself, probably better to be the guy taking the gun to a knife fight than the other way around.
Yes, indeed.
And so I walked out there, and I was very cordial, and I said, sir, can I help you with something? Why are you here? And he stopped, and he looked at me, and he says, well, you see that room back there, that building back there? And I said, yeah, that's my tack room. And he goes, well, that's where I live. And I said, whoa, wait a minute here. You know what? I signed all the paperwork when I bought this house, and in the SPDS, there was never any mention that there was, a guy who lived in the building back there. And I said, you're the first time that I'm hearing about this. And he looked at me and goes, well, that's where I live. And I said, well, what do you do around here? And he goes, well, it's my job to kill the monsters. And I'm like, oh, God, ask a crazy person a reasonable question.
Get an
you're
answer.
not going to get a reasonable answer, And, so I tried to keep a straight face, and I said, what monsters? And he goes, well, there's a lot of monsters around here. This whole area is full of them. And I said, so somebody put you in charge of killing the monsters, huh? And he goes, that's right. And I said, well, I got to tell you, there's no monsters. There's no anything in any description on the paperwork. I bought the place, a couple of days ago, and I don't need your services. So I'd appreciate if you've got anything back there, you just clear it out and pack your stuff and take off. And he walked back there, grabbed a bed sheet, threw a bunch of stuff in it, wrapped it up, threw it over his shoulder, turned around and came out, looked at me and shook his bony finger at me and said, you're going to be very sorry. And I thought to myself, this is great. Now I got people threatening me in my own driveway.
Yeah.
We're off to a good start here. And I wished him well, and he took off, walked off down the lane, and that's the last I ever heard him or saw him. I've never seen him since.
That's just so weird.
Well, welcome to my world.
I actually was talking about the Men in Black, but that's one of my favorite stories too, because you actually had some follow-up discussion on that, didn't you? When you told somebody about him.
Yeah, we've had the Men in Black here. I mean, you know, it's crazy the way a lot of this stuff just, I don't know. It's almost like it comes out of the lore that goes with the paranormal. But I had a friend of mine here at the time, and by this time we'd been on the ranch for a couple, I don't know, maybe 3 or 4 years. And it was very obvious to me that, you know, guns are a good thing, and I should probably have a few more of them. And, you know, so I had, over the period of time there, collected a few guns, and I had a whole picnic table full of long guns and a few handguns. And I had them out on the picnic table, and he and I were cleaning them together and making sure that everything was firing properly. And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, this is probably 2, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, a dark blue SUV pulls up out in front. And by now we had gates, real gates out front. And 2 men get out of the SUV. It had government plates on it, you know, white plate with black writing. And they get out and come up to the front gates. And I'm like, okay, I guess I'm going to have to walk out there and see what this is about. God knows what this is, you know.
Right.
And so I start to walk down the path on the driveway. And these guys literally, they don't like stop at the gates. They don't like, you know, shake the gates or anything else. They literally walk right through them like they're not even there. And come up the path and meet me about halfway up the driveway. And they look like the Blues Brothers. I mean, they're wearing dark suits. You know, they got the fedora hats on. They got the, you know, sunglasses, the whole works. And I'm thinking to myself, wow, you know, this is just crazy. Why everything that happens here is like from something else, you know? I mean, it's just, you know, it's just crazy. And I looked at him and I said, can I help you with something? And I guess that's kind of like my favorite line, my
It's one you use a lot.
Yeah, well, I mean, you know, what are you going to say, you know? I mean, I'm trying not to be hostile, and I'm trying to, you know, not say, hey, get off my property, you know, you're trespassing, etc. And I looked at him and I said, can I help you with something? Do you have some ID or anything? And they stopped literally about 1.5 feet, 2 feet from my face. And I could see them very, very clearly. And the first thing I noticed about them was the fact that their skin, you know, Arizona, everybody's got a tan. I mean, you can't help but get a tan here. These guys look like they had just crawled out from under a rock. I mean, they had white chicken skin, like skin that looked like, you know, chicken at the grocery store under plastic, under cellophane. And I was like struck by that. They did not look, I mean, they were human, but they didn't look like they were alive. And the one guy just looked at me and he said, "You are John Edmonds." And I said, "Yes." And he said, "You must stop posting information on the cause website." And then he repeated himself. They both turned around. They walked back out through the gates, literally through them again, and got in the SUV and drove away.
That is the most bizarre thing I've heard. Out of all the bizarre things that happened there, as far as people coming, they're second to the monster guy. I mean, it's just crazy. And I've never heard, right? But I've never heard Men in Black looking, well, I don't know. When you say they look like the Blues Brothers, were they unkempt or was it just the clothes?
No, they were very. I mean, they weren't disheveled at all. They looked professional.
Okay.
They just had this uncanny, a similarity to the Blues Brothers. I'm from Chicago, so I'm pretty familiar with the Blues Brothers.
Well, yes. Well, me too, because they're my heroes.
Right.
But yeah, that really is just crazy. Everything that happens there has some extreme to more extreme degree of insanity attached to it, or what one would think. I mean, it's just
that's
nuts.
the whole thing. I mean, it's these experiences aren't just like experiences, that they're bigger than life experiences. They have connotations that are related to thematically, kind of like other things.
Yes.
And that's what's weird about them. I mean, they're not just like little snippets of strangeness. They're little snippets of strangeness that are readily identifiable from something else.
Yeah, it's like there's some sort of behind the scenes stage set, because they've pulled from something that you've experienced, and so it's triggering recognition in you, which actually probably prevents you from reacting more strongly than you do, because like Blues Brothers, not that threatening, even if they did just walk through your gate.
Well, not only that, but I had a whole picnic table full of guns right there.
Right, and they just walked
they
up.
had to see that. Yeah, they had to see that. And I'm just, I'm thinking to myself, any other day this would be weird, but it's exceptionally weird because of the fact that, we're standing out here doing this.
Right. And they felt no hesitation about approaching you.
Never even said anything. I mean, and never showed me any ID, even though I repeatedly asked them to show me ID. The only reason I knew it had anything to do with something that was official was because I saw the government plates on the vehicle.
It's like you bought your farm, bought your ranch, and moved inadvertently into the Twilight Zone.
Yeah.
Right?
Good point.
I mean, because everything, and it started so quickly. I mean, you didn't really even get a grace period.
No, there was like no time off for good behavior.
Yeah. Well, I just find it bizarre. How long after you moved in did the abduction attempt occur?
I'm sorry, I had a hard time hearing you. Could you say that again?
Absolutely. I just said, how long after you moved in did the abduction attempt occur?
Oh, man. We started having actual experiences where we saw grays, and we started seeing other types of ET, or at least weird looking stuff. We don't even know if it was ET. Within about 6 months to a year.
Wow.
And then it just got much worse after that. After I had the experience on the sun porch, it was a sun porch at that point. It wasn't really fully, part of the house, where I actually killed one of the grays. It became a full-on firefight, and it was kind of like a war at that point. I guess I had made up my mind that I was going to do whatever it took, and I guess, I'm surmising here, they decided they were going to do whatever it took to run us off. And we started having these violent interactions, as many as 3 and 4 times a week.
That's just astounding.
Well, I'm an extremely stubborn person, and I'm not going to get.
I will give you that.
Yeah,
I will give you that. Well, I think that you've done a great job. We're at the top of the hour, so this is going to be a news break. We will be back right after this, and every time I do this, I'm ever hopeful that I'm going to hear a little good news today. And I do know that there's some, because Phil Mickelson won the PGA as the oldest player to do so, so go Phil. but that's about all I've seen so far on the news for the day. So maybe there's going to be something excellent there. We'll be right back. Y'all come back too, and here's your news.
Welcome back to
Support for NPR and the following message come from Almond Board of California. With its Mediterranean climate, California is one of 5 places on Earth where almonds can grow. That's why almond farmers responsibly conserve water. More at almondsustainability.org.
Live from NPR News, I'm Janine Herbst. It's the third day of an Egyptian-brokered truce between Israel and Hamas as Egypt continues to try to solidify it. Then NPR's Mara Eliason reports on the Biden administration's approach to the decades-long conflict.
The biggest change is that President Biden, unlike past presidents, does not consider solving the Israeli-Palestinian conflict as a top foreign policy priority. Although President Biden insists his approach to Israel hasn't changed at all.
There is no shift in my commitment to the security of Israel, period. No shift. Not at all.
But that statement came in response to a question about whether his party has changed, and it has. The progressive base of the Democratic Party views the Israeli-Palestinian conflict through a racial justice lens and increasingly champions the Palestinian cause. And last week, staunch supporters of Israel, like Democratic Senators Bob Menendez and Chuck Schumer, criticized Israel's actions in Gaza and publicly called for a ceasefire before President Biden did. Mara Eliason, NPR News.
European Union governments are calling it shocking, unprecedented, and utterly unacceptable that Belarusian authorities forced a Ryanair flight to divert from its route and land in Minsk. That in order to arrest an opposition journalist on board. Terry Schultz reports EU leaders will discuss sanctions against Belarus at their summit that starts on Monday.
Belarusian authorities signaled there was a bomb on board the flight from Athens to Vilnius to convince the pilots to make an emergency landing in Minsk. Belarusian blogger Roman Protasevich, who's critical of the government, was then arrested. EU Council President Charles Michel says Protasevich must be immediately released and promises there will be consequences for what he calls this unprecedented incident.
Terry Schultz reporting. An advisory panel to the CDC says it's looking into reports of heart inflammation in people who receive mRNA COVID-19 vaccines. Sam Whitehead of member station WABE reports the panel has found a handful of reports in young people and say most of those cases seem mild.
The CDC's Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices released a statement on the relatively few reported cases of myocarditis last week. It says they seem to occur in male adolescents and young adults, and typically within 4 days after vaccination, more often following a second dose. Most cases appear to be mild, the panel says, and follow-up is ongoing. It recommends doctors be informed of the potential for myocarditis and to be on the lookout for it in people who have been vaccinated. The Vaccine Advisory Panel recently recommended Pfizer's mRNA vaccine for anyone 12 years and up. Moderna's mRNA vaccine is recommended for people 18 and older. For NPR News, I'm Sam Whitehead in Atlanta.
And you're listening to NPR News from Washington. Convicted murderer Dylan Roof's attorneys will be back in court this week, arguing that his conviction and death sentence should be overturned. Roof is the white supremacist who killed 9 worshipers at a black church in South Carolina in 2015. Oral arguments are scheduled Tuesday before a 3-judge panel on the 4th Circuit U.S. Court of Appeals in Richmond, Virginia. Roof, who went back and forth in representing himself or using his attorneys, filed his appeal in January of 2020, where his attorneys argued he was too mentally ill at the time to represent himself. They want the sentence suspended until a proper assessment of Roof can be done. The BBC journalist who conducted a controversial interview with Princess Diana 25 years ago has apologized for using falsified bank documents to obtain that interview. As Willem Marks reports from London, during the interview, Diana exposed details of her deeply troubled marriage to Prince Charles.
Martin Bashir told the British newspaper he regretted his actions and felt deeply sorry for Diana's sons, Princes William and Harry. But he rejected claims that by showing Diana's brother forged bank statements suggesting she was under surveillance, he'd fueled her paranoia. He also insisted she was content about the interview that accelerated her estrangement from the royal family and subsequently remained on friendly terms with him. His apology contrasts sharply with a statement from the BBC's former Director General Tony Hall, who resigned Saturday from a high-profile post at Britain's National Gallery, insisting leadership meant taking responsibility. For NPR News, I'm Dylan Marks in London.
And I'm Janine Herbst, and you're listening to NPR News.
Welcome back to WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. The time is 5 minutes after the hour. Welcome back for the second hour of Fate Mag Radio, the online voice of Fate Magazine. And I'm going to tell you that if you have not been to fatemag.com of late, you really need to check it out. We've got archives, we've got new editions, we've got t-shirts, which I love because they are so comfy and soft that I wear them all the time. We've got trading cards. We have all kinds of neat things. So just check it out. And there's also a chat forum there. And they have a link to this show with our chat. So come on, check it out and you'll love it. Also, if you need a new subscription or to check on yours, that's where you go to do that too. Now, I am so excited because I am fortunate enough to have John Edmonds here with me, who is the owner, founder, and CEO of Stardust Ranch. But he also has a horse rescue, Hopeful Hooves. And John, when I was reading your book, the compassion that you had for these animals that were just loose all of a sudden struck me. And I'm so glad that you found a way to help them. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure, I'd be happy to. Animals have always been one of my greatest joys. Growing up as an only child, I pretty much, I always had animals, stray cats, dogs, you name it. And where I lived, there were no horses because it was an urban environment, but there were horses out in the wealthy suburbs that were considerably far west of us. And so, back in the day, and we're talking, late 60s, early 70s, everybody hitchhiked. And so I used to hitchhike out to where all the money guys were that had the stables and hang out with the horses because I love horses. And, so that was something that in the back of my mind, when I got to Arizona, even though I came here to go to school, I thought to myself, well, someday I'm going to have a ranch, someday I'm going to have a horse. And when I got out here to the ranch, I thought to myself, man, this is perfect. This is totally set up for horses. And the next question was, well, okay, so where are you going to get horses from? And so I used to take my Jeep and drive out into the desert, and I would see horses out there. Now, I didn't know that these horses were mostly domestic horses that have been taken out there and left to die because people got tired of them or decided that they didn't want them anymore for whatever reason. And, so I thought, wow, I wonder what it would take to kind of like walk up to some of these horses and see if they're friendly. So I went to a feed store locally here and I bought some hay and I bought some sweet feed and I drove it out into the desert. And, it's amazing. Horses can smell compared to people, their senses are so much stronger. It didn't take me at any time at all to make friends with those horses. And very shortly after doing that for a few days, every time I drive the Jeep back to the ranch, which was about 15 or 16 miles, these horses would start following me. And so I thought, okay, hey, I'll drive slow and let's see if they hang in there. And in those days, the roads out here were all, gravel roads. There was no pavement. There was no traffic at all. I mean, if you saw another person for, 2 or 3 times a day out here, it was remarkable. And so the horses just kind of, gallop behind the Jeep and follow me back to the ranch. So lo and behold, very quickly, I started having horses, free horses. And believe me, horses eat a lot. So anything you can do for free with horses is like a big plus. So that's how I ended up with horses. And Hopeful Hooves kind of came along because I noticed over time that there were an awful lot of these kind of horses that were out there that were just being dumped. And, my wife was like, John, we can't afford to just, take all these horses and pay for them out of our pocket. You need to figure out some way to get some help with this. So I formed Hopeful Hooves, which is a charity that's set up for, providing long-term sanctuary training and placement for horses. And gradually over the years, people have kind of like dumped dogs here and, all sorts of animals. I mean, it got so crazy at one point, we actually had a mountain lion that lived across the street from us that used to come down and get water out of our front horse trough. And, I'd feed it hot dogs and stuff. And, gradually over the years, we've had just about everything.
Interesting. Well, with the cat, did it not mess with any of the other animals?
No, I had an arrangement with the cat.
There you go.
At least in my mind, that if it was going to come down and hang out, it had to be, had to chill out when it came to any other animals. And it did. It never, not once, ever tried to make an attempt on a horse or a foal or anything else. It would just come down across the street, maybe 700 or 800 yards away from the cave that it lived in. And it would just come down real early in the morning, get water. I'd give it some hot dogs or whatever I had, and turn around and go back up. And that was it. And I'd see it once or twice a week that way.
All right. Well, so basically, you have skills as far as animal whispering, because that's pretty astounding.
Well, I have no fear. And I have no fear of animals or ETs
no.
or anything else. So, the thing is with animals is if you don't act fearful, then, they don't act fearful usually towards you.
Yes.
And
or
so
aggressive.
It's a lot easier to kind of like cut out all the noise and just get down to the bonding point where you can have some kind of relationship with them. And, I learned that when I was a little kid. And so my whole life I've been around animals.
Well, I have too, and I think there's a lot to be said for that. So I'm very good with dogs and horses, but cats I've only had one cat in my whole life, and she thought she was a dog. She actually trained my new puppy that we got from the pound, and so till the day he died, he would bathe himself and, do all the cat ritualistic things, and she was proud of him. And then he's who taught my other dogs as they came into the house how to be a dog. And so they all bathed themselves. It's funny. But, they are who the leader is. So, well, I am, the stuff that comes after getting the horses and the interaction with these ETs or whatever type of beings they are took a downturn, and I know that hurts. I don't know if you want to talk about that, but
well, yeah, I mean, it's
we don't have to.
I would just tell you this, and that is that the incidents that led up to us deciding that, this was a very hostile environment and that it was going to be a dangerous place, they were not so much founded on, the fact that we saw various different craft, the fact that we had the Phoenix Lights occur and, we watched the whole thing happen from the ranch. None of these things that other people would look at and go, oh my God, that's huge. It was all based on direct experience where we had incidents where horses were mutilated, and we had it fully investigated. We had the livestock board come out. We had the sheriff's department come out. We were cleared of anything, and open cases were out there. I mean, it was like they came out and spent like, almost an entire day trying to figure stuff out. They took photographs, video, you name it, everything. And what we had found out gradually, kind of on the side, was that our ranch wasn't the only place that some of these things happened. They had gone on for decades on other ranches. And so this was not just an isolated incident. This was something that from a cultural point of view, had occurred in the larger community. And I think that's really important for people to understand that, because what it means is that this ranch isn't just one target. There's lots of ranches out here that have been targeted over the years, and they have found all sorts of weird stuff out in the desert, from like hieroglyphics on rocks to you name it. I mean, it's just, Arizona is just a really funky place. I'm sorry. I'm from the Midwest, and man, this place, it's everything that everybody's ever accused it of being.
I would give it that. I've been there just short-term holidays, that thing, drive over from, Las Vegas while my husband plays in tournaments and whatnot. There's nowhere that's quite right. That doesn't feel out of balance somewhat.
Well, they didn't make all those 1950 science fiction movies, in Arizona for no good reason.
That would be true. But
if you're ever going to find a giant spider,
it's going to be there.
Be
and it's going to look at you like your lunch. So,
well, I mean, and we've had our entire barn covered with tarantulas. I mean, we have a 5,000 square foot barn, and at one point, I got up in the morning to go out and feed the horses, and I looked outside, and there's a cover over this part of the ranch, or over the building, kind of like a carport where you could drive underneath it and have some, get out of the heat and get out of the sun, and the entire far eastern wall of the barn looked like it was moving. It was black and furry.
Oh my gosh.
There were thousands of tarantulas on that wall. And man, I'll tell you what, that gave me the creeps worse than any gray alien or anything else.
Well, that would give me the creeps, because I was in a place called Good Springs, Nevada, which is where a place I like to investigate is. And it was almost tarantula time, and it was nighttime. And I thought, well, they jump, right? Because they had told me that, it's almost hot enough. I don't know if you're going to see any or not. And I had to think, it was 112 during the day today, and it's not quite hot enough. I don't want to run across these things. But I can't imagine your whole barn being covered with that.
Oh, I was blown away. I went and got my wife, and she's like, "Oh my God, kill them!" I'm like, "Hell no, I'm not going to kill them. They'll probably eat us."
They will swarm.
Yeah. I just said, leave them alone. Let's keep the dogs away from them and just leave them alone. Maybe they'll disappear. And sure enough, they're gone like the next morning. But we there's certain desert creatures out here. Rattlesnakes. Big lizards. Tarantulas. I mean, it's just part of living in the desert.
It is. But the tarantulas jumping at me, I don't have a problem with them being big and hairy if they would just walk. I don't like the jumping because it startles. It's startling. But
right.
Oh, and in chat we've got that would be a definite reason to move out that second. Forget the ETs, forget the Roman soldiers, forget everything else going on. The tarantulas would be the final straw. But
well, in my mind, every time something happens like this out here, I most people would get horrified and turn around and run away.
Yeah.
I just look at it and I kind of laugh. I say to myself, "Oh, so this is going to be like the newest weird thing that's going on to add to the collection," Well,
that's kind of how you have to look at the things that are happening at your place.
Yeah. Well, it's like neighbors. We never had neighbors. And then as the story started coming out about the ranch, all of a sudden we got neighbors all around us now.
Really?
And yeah, and it's interesting because instead of, just having people move in, and they would literally like find ways to, contact us and come and see us, and then ask if all the stuff was true. And
Did you tell him just to hang out a while?
Well, I told him, I said, I don't understand your behavior. I mean, why wouldn't you like come and see us or talk to us or something beforehand before you move in? It's like, now you're stuck. You've already put your money into someplace here, and now you're along for the ride along with the rest of us. And I found out over time they blame me for this.
Oh
and
my
I'm like,
word.
yeah, I've been trying to figure that out. I'm like, why would you blame me? I mean, it's like, I was here first, and I didn't ask you to move here. I don't even know who you are. And it's like, you move out here, and all of a sudden, I'm responsible for all the crap that goes on. And it's just part of the wonderful experience of being here.
No doubt. Well, I need to let people know that you are listening to Fate Magazine Radio here on WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. And that is our official station identification break. So when these people come to your house to ask you that sounds rather off-putting. And then to be frustrated because the stuff's true. What do they say when you say that you should have come to ask us about this?
Well, it's really funny the way it happens, because, and to me, this is a great indicator of the mindset that's involved. The adults don't come and see me, okay? They let their high school age boys, like, jump my fence or climb under the fence or whatever, and they're the ones that suddenly just turn up outside. And they'll start questioning me. They don't even greet me. It's like, hey, is all that crap true? And I'm like, whoa, wait a minute. You're on my property and you weren't invited. So what are you doing here? Oh, well, we're the neighbors. We just moved in over there and we thought we'd come and find out if it was real or not. And I'm thinking to myself, man, what kind of parents would not even control their kids and just let them do this? And instead of just being, nice and being polite and, leaving a note with a phone number or something on the gate and saying, hey, I'd like to talk to you. No, none of that. I mean, none of the stuff that I was raised to do.
Exactly.
Yeah. It's like this gang member kind of mentality, thing. It's just weird, and this is kind of the mindset that we're now dealing with out here is, everybody seems to kind of like hate our guts, because they came out and found out for real that because they're having their own experiences, and they're kind of going through the same routine that I went through originally, which is they're too afraid to talk about it because they don't want to be considered to be nuts.
Right.
And so, they're keeping it to themselves, but they're young teenagers, aren't. And they're actually like trying to hang out and get more information, to try to compare stories. And, I've been nice about it so far, but, that's why I hung extra signs on the fences that said, hey, video surveillance, you're not supposed to be here, no trespassing, so on and so forth. But yeah, people don't respect it.
I don't understand that at all.
I guess it's a different mentality. We're too close to California.
I'm not touching that. Just because, just because you're right, I'm not going to endorse that statement. But, I want to ask, when these people are sharing their experiences, are they also having the portals or vortexes? Are they actually seeing into other dimensions like you have been? And do you still do that? I mean, do you still see like history through your portals?
we have seen, every experience is different. I always tell people, you got to take each experience for what it's worth individually. People make leading questions or generalities and things like that. And you really can't do that. It's like ET, everybody refers to like all aliens as ET. And trust me, there are dozens of different races.
Yes.
So just because, a gray axe, has one type of behavior, that doesn't mean a Pleiadian or an Andromedan or anybody else is going to have the same mindset, the same culture, the same, anything. And so I tell people you got to be really specific about things. And people are so unfamiliar. We don't have the language. We don't have the mindset. We don't have any of that stuff yet to be able to really provide a lot of good analysis of what this whole phenomenon is. And so, I try to kind of make corrections to what people say to get them to, sharpen their thinking and to try to understand that you can't just jump to conclusions about anything. And the specifics of this particular situation are, yes, we see things. Since we got surrounded by neighbors, we see less than we used to. I don't know why that is. And I've heard some pretty horrific things from some of the neighbors, mostly as they were getting ready to, leave in terms of move out. We had a realtor that practically ran me down at my front gates one day and told me that she was being attacked, in her house. And, at first I didn't even know she knew the story or that she was talking about, aliens. I said, well, did you call the sheriff? And she just looked at me like, you crazy? I wouldn't call the sheriff for that. And I'm like, what are we talking about here? And she goes, I was assaulted sexually by an ET. And I said, okay. And you're telling me this, why? I don't even know who you are. It's not like we're, drinking buddies here. I mean, what's up? And
Seriously.
she just said, well, you're the only person that's had any of these experiences that I can talk to. And I said, all right, well, let's start at the beginning. So, here I am. It's like 115 degrees outside. And this woman's parked outside my front gates. And I can't get out to go to where I want to go. And she wants to sit down and have, individual counseling session on the front hood of her Land Rover. And so these are the kind of things I run into all the time. Thank God I came from a background of working in mental health, because at least, no matter how crazy my life experiences are, I've had, a couple of decades of dealing with other people's stuff. So
well, that's what you're trained in. So,
yeah, no
because you've been a counselor. There are no coincidences. I agree with you.
Well, it's like my wife. My wife was in the FBI. Okay, so we got people that are, in these professions where they're pretty highly respected. And, here we are dealing with ET and dealing with all this weird ranch stuff. Again, no coincidence there.
Well, it's almost like you were professionally groomed to come across that. It's an interesting concept.
Yeah, Bruce has pointed that out, or to you, Brian.
I'm never letting that down. That's hilarious. Of course, he probably does go by Bruce now. I mean, Brian. Now I'm going to get it backwards. That's
I'm
funny.
Going to tease it. There's that old Monty Python movie, Life of Brian.
Yes. Well, what's funny is that I have an acquaintance who hung in there with me as long as he could. His name is Brian Bruce. Seriously. Or backwards. But that's really his name. So he would show up in my chat, and I would always say hello, and I would always transpose that. And I finally just said, I am so sorry. You must be so frustrated. so now, now I've got someone else to do that too. So yay. But
that's funny.
I know, right? But when you were talking about the Pleiadians versus the Andromedans versus, well, all of the various species, when when I have been at conferences and met people who believe that they are, star seeds, star children, whatever term they use with that, almost without exception, their claim is Palladian. And I don't know if they think that, the Pleiades, the Seven Sisters, they must be, social, whatever. But why do you think that is the species that most choose to identify with based on your experience?
Well, for one thing, a lot of these alien races have been here as long as humans have been here. Really, if you think about it, we think of Earth as being that we're the people of Earth. Well, honestly, there's a lot of races that have been here as long or even longer than humans. And they're probably fairly entitled to call themselves, the original race that inhabited this planet, just as much as we are. And the Pleiadians have been working, this neck of the woods, so to speak, for a long, long time. A lot of these races have, but they've always been pretty much, most of these races have been very cautious about identifying themselves or trying to, have any kind of exchange in terms of, putting a lot of information out there. The reason that we are becoming more and more aware that, Earth is just one location where there's, multiple races is because of the fact that gradually some of these things are beginning to break down and people are talking. The fact that we came out and tried to treat it just as a subject like any other, and instead of making a big deal out of it, we just try to relate to it like, regular people. I think that's, maybe propelling some of this. The media wants to get involved in terms of putting information out there. But quite frankly, I have met very few people in the media that have much of a clue. They don't have any practical experience. There's very few real books out there that explain, the historic nature of it, how all this stuff works. And, I don't know why the ranch is so popular. I always say it's kind of like a interdimensional, train station or bus station. And that is that, every 74 days, at least that's what I used to think anyway, the portals are open. And so things transmit from one place to another. And that's why we see so much. I've had to rethink that over time because the 74-day part doesn't seem to be consistent enough to say it's a rule. But things are just opening up. People are starting to hear more and more and see more and more. And they're realizing that this stuff isn't just happening here at Stardust Ranch. It's happening around the world. And, instead of being terrified and acting like deer caught in the headlights, they're actually starting to be curious, and they're starting to, read and, try to learn about it and understand it.
And doing a fair job, too, I must say.
Yes.
Because people are not running screaming for the hills any longer. We have a couple of questions I want to make sure we get to. Have you been able to identify certain craft that you may see on your property with specific alien races? Like if you see a craft, you say, okay, that's the Greys, etc. And how many types of craft have you seen?
Well, I would be the last person in the world to call myself an expert at any of this stuff. At best, I'm a sort of a, armchair quarterback. I can't identify one ship versus another in terms of races. I can say I've seen probably 5 or 6 different craft up close. In one case, I saw one of the craft very up close, like 30 feet away. We've seen triangles, we've seen saucers, we've seen things that look like the long cigars, we've seen all sorts of different things. And what's interesting is that we've seen, not so much anymore, but in the old days, we used to see what looked like small groups of Cobra helicopters that were flying 100 feet off the ground, chasing this stuff out in the desert. So, we're not the only ones seeing this stuff. I mean, the military knows about it. We have seen triangles that were less than 100 feet off the ground that were from tip to tip large enough that they obscured about a third of a 10-acre ranch overhead.
Wow. I have a friend who was abducted in one of those.
Well, I actually had Peter Davenport from the UFO Reporting Center actually on the phone, and I was standing underneath this thing reporting it to him, with witnesses there. And I mean, this thing was there for quite a bit of time. I mean, probably, like 20 minutes. And he's like, you got to get somebody from an official capacity to validate it. And I said, well, Peter, what do you want me to do? And he's like, well, call the cops. I'm like, they don't have cops out here. They have sheriffs. He goes, well, call the sheriff. And I'm like, all right, put you on hold. So I call the sheriff, and, they send over a deputy. And this was a very strange story. I guess like all the rest of them. But deputy sheriff comes out. We're standing there out at the front gates with two other witnesses and this black triangle overhead. And the deputy gets out of the car. His license plate on his car has been covered. He's got a raincoat on so that you can't see his badge or his, nothing to identify him. And I said, do you see that overhead? He goes, yeah. And I said, can you please write a report? And he goes, nope. And I said, what do you mean, no? And he goes, there's no way in hell that I'm going to make a report of this. And I said, well, this is part of your job. This is a threat. I mean, this is like a big deal. And he goes, well, I'm not reporting it. And I said, well, what the hell good are you then? Why am I paying your taxes? Taxes for guys that don't do anything. And he just looked at me and he smiles. And he goes, do you know what would happen if I made a report of this? This information would be everywhere. And, the sheriff's department does not want to be associated with this kind of thing. Wow. And I said, so part of serve and protect is which part? Like just observe and hang out?
Observe and hang out.
Yeah. I mean, I don't get it. And, I reported the whole thing. Peter Davenport heard the conversation. So I don't know what to say. We see all sorts of weird stuff.
Yeah. Well, that's very interesting because when I had my experiences here, I called someone at MUFON and said, you're not going to believe this, but I've got da-da-da-da-da. And they're like, well, make a report. I said, I am making a report. I am talking to you. So take that for what it's worth, because there's no way. I mean, I tried to use the system, and apparently it was having a glitchy time. And I went to all the trouble of putting in all the information and stuff, and it wouldn't take it. So that's when I realized that, well, for the most part, if you're seeing this stuff and you're not into it, you're on your own. I mean, you can't get any right. And
especially with MUFON, my experiences with MUFON would just they were horrible. I mean, and I used to hang out with MUFON in the early days on the ranch and thought they were a bunch of pretty cool people. And then I went to a conference and confronted one of the people about MUFON and said, hey, you guys say you investigate all these reports. I said, this stuff's been going on. We got video, we got photographs, we got all sorts of stuff. And I said, you guys can't even be bothered to come out to the ranch and talk to us. I said, well, what's that about? And at the time, the guy just flew off the handle. I mean, literally just went bananas and said, oh, well, your story's full of blah, 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 blah. I'm like, how would you even know? You don't know anything because you didn't come out and make the report. I said, we have actual witnesses. I said, we have video, we have artifacts, we have everything. I said, I am a trained person to provide expert witness in a federal court. And I said, I have done everything that I could do according to those standards. If there was ever anything that validated the information, our stuff is it. And the guy literally got in my face like he was going to punch me. He ended up getting escorted out of the conference.
Wow. That's disappointing, isn't it?
Yeah, well, I mean, I've come to expect nothing because, you know, we seem to get like a, you know, triple burger with cheese every time, you know, we try to have any expectation.
Oh, yeah. Well, we have another question. Do you feel like any elementals might be attached to your property, and if you've ever had evidence of experiences with them?
I got to tell you, I'm not even sure what an elemental is. Folks, I'm a social worker. You know, I mean, I live in a weird ranch, but that
you live on a weird ranch, but you don't do.
You know,
well, they're just like nature spirits. They're like, things that take care of the property.
Yeah, people think I'm like, you know, Mr. Professional, paranormal guy. I'm not.
Well,
I'm just a survivor. I'm a witness.
You are a survivor, and I mean, there have been moments that you are very fortunate to be a survivor.
Absolutely.
So,
and nothing demeaning to your person who's asking the question. It's a great question. I just don't know how to answer it.
Well, it's a different experience from what you're having. Elementals are nature spirits who basically take care of, they're caretakers of the earth. And so a lot of them are relevant in Native American cultures, like the Cherokee here, probably the Hopi there.
I'm half Cherokee, and I don't even know the answer to that.
Well, that's okay. Like you said, you're a survivor.
Yep.
And I am very glad that y'all are survivors, because y'all have had to survive a whole lot. But
we've seen weird stuff. I mean, there are things that we can't explain. We don't even know how to describe them, that we see. We just look at them and go, yeah, add it to the, to the stew of weird stuff that we've already seen. I mean, it's so bad, that people come out and hang out, and they go out and feed the horses with me, and they see stuff, and they go, did you see that? And I'm like, yeah, so what? It's not going to do anything to you. It's just here. And they're like, you don't even care. I'm like, no, not really. I mean, I've been seeing this stuff for 25 years.
Gave up caring a few years ago. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like going to Yellowstone and seeing, bears eating out of a trash can or something. I mean, it's like, you don't, go, yeah, there's a bear. It's eating out of a trash can. And everybody goes, oh, wow, look at the cute bear over there. It must be hungry. I'm like, yeah, well, the aliens do their thing. We do ours.
There you go. Well, we're going to take our last break. And if you have questions, go ahead and get them in the chat, because this is it. We'll be right back. Y'all come back too.
You're listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, the best in paranormal talk, only on Paranormal Experience Radio, broadcasting live out of Birmingham, Alabama.
Oh, come on. I'm Southern, but... nope. That'll do. Hello. I am Kat Hobson, host of Paranormal Experience here on WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. I enjoy having guests from all areas of the paranormal, from ghosts to ufology to cryptids and beyond. You'll find some of the best researchers in their fields bringing you some great information. Join me on Wednesday nights from 8 to 10 p. Eastern here on WBHM Digital Broadcasting.
This is Jason Bland, host of Midwest Paranormal Presents Paranormal Soup, where we stream live as a webcast every Sunday night, 11 p.m. to 2 a.m. Eastern, with guests who will blow your mind. Live ghost box sessions where you can call into the show to see if the spirits will talk to you, and the World Wide Web of Weird with the latest in paranormal news and evidence. We're bringing the weird every Sunday night, 11 p.m. to 2 a.m. Eastern on our Facebook page and YouTube channel. Don't forget to follow and subscribe.
You are listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, the best in paranormal talk, only on Paranormal Experience Radio. Broadcasting live out of Birmingham, Alabama.
Thank you for listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. The time is 45 minutes after the hour.
Welcome back to this final segment of Fate, and we are going to just hop right in if you don't mind, John.
I'm all here.
All right. Do you have a faith of any kind or way that you respond to threats?
Well, I respond to threats on the ranch the same way I would respond to any threat, and that is that I make myself very clear that I'm not impressed and that I'm not going to tolerate, any kind of violence or anything against the ranch or against any of the animals here, or my wife, or anything else. I'm not a person, like I said, I'm not bragging when I say I have no fear. I sort of had the mindset that I died a long time ago, because I actually did back in 1973. And I consider, myself to be, all the time that I've had since 73 is just kind of a bonus round. And so, fear is for people that are not in control of their emotions. It's a very natural thing for humans, but for me, I just don't feel it. So I don't go out of my way to try to be aggressive or assertive or anything else. But if something brings it or somebody brings it, I'm their worst nightmare.
As some of those visitors to the ranch learned in your living room.
Well, they not only learned via a samurai sword, but they've learned via me getting my hands on them personally. Mm-hmm. I mean, I can't tell you how many of these things I've actually physically had to, literally whoop E.T.'s ass.
Well, but when you have to do it, that's what you've done. And
yep, that's it.
Sherry said that your wife must be a tough cookie like you are, but that's amazing.
Well, so, I mean, she leaves it all up to me. I mean, she's been the victim, and if I could change one thing in my life, it would be not to have had a situation where my wife was exposed to all this. My greatest regret in life is the fact that my wife has had to suffer because of the fact that I bought this ranch.
Well, I'm sorry about that.
It breaks my heart. I mean, as much of a, sort of a tough guy thing, I put on the face. In my heart, I cry because of the fact that I am so terribly guilt-ridden because of the fact that she's had to go through what she's had to go through. It absolutely just destroys me because I love my wife.
I know. I really do know. The way that you speak of her, the care that you have for her, the fact that you were able to stop her abduction. I mean, I don't know of anyone else who has ever been able to do that. So your dedication was quite obvious. And
see, I think an awful lot of it was just luck.
Well, you know what? It's always a good thing to have.
I agree.
But I think that she must be pretty.
I live my life through faith, and I just every single night, my wife and I pray, and we say, Lord, please keep all evil from this ranch. Keep us safe, help us to be strong and good, and to keep the animals safe, and to try to pursue the things for the future that we want to do for the world.
Well, I got nothing to that because that's just wonderful.
We do.
And apparently it is helping.
We dedicated our lives to being good people and trying to do the right thing.
That's obvious. So I'm so glad I reached out to you. I really and truly am. Because the fact that I know the care that you have for your wife, and we're friends on Facebook. I saw the photos. Your love is so very obvious, and that's a really neat thing. My husband is the same way for me, and me him. It's just that I don't know when you both said for better or for worse that you ever anticipated that you would be fighting
aliens
and trying to take out their ship to keep her with you. I mean, you could not have possibly been aware that that was going to happen. And yet now you're both coping with that because, of lack of options. And you're actually helping to educate the public a bit to these experiences. And the way that you've chosen to deal with them is very admirable.
Thank you. Well, Kat, I'll tell you something. And I put an ad in the classifieds. That's how I met my wife.
Get out of town.
And no, I'm serious.
That's awesome.
1991, I think it was. I put an ad in the Arizona New Times. And I got over 500 responses to that ad. And the very last person that answered that ad, when I listened to the tape recorded voice message from it, I heard a crystal bell and it just went ding. And then Joyce's message came up. And I knew out of all the other people that I had promised to either go out and have a drink or coffee or dinner or at least a phone call or whatever, I knew she was the one. From the moment I heard that crystal bell, it was like Jesus had just said, okay, John, you asked me to pick somebody for you. Here she is.
What in the world did your ad say?
It was a real simple ad. It was a little bit before Christmas. And I had just said that I was looking to meet either a single or divorced woman. I put in the age approximation, for fireside chats and just good conversation and friendship. And the ads were just, people responded, women responded from all walks of life. From presidents of big companies to, just regular average souls to you name it. And because of the fact that I said I would answer each one personally, no matter what, I guess they just took that as being very sincere and very heartfelt. And for like 6 months, I was answering those ads and actually meeting those people and having those experiences. And some of them were phenomenal. I mean, they were like, hey, let's go to, San Diego for the weekend. Let's go to Paris, whatever. I'm rich. I'll pay for it. I'm like, wow, okay, let's go. So I had some wild, crazy experiences with that as well.
Probably non-alien related.
No, nothing like it. Nothing like it.
That is just... That is sincere and heartfelt, and I'm so glad that you found her because the chat is melting.
Well,
they're like, yeah.
It's just one of those things. I mean, I had absolutely no idea. When I asked her to marry me, I told her, I said, look, you know what? I can't promise you anything except that life will be interesting, that I will be loyal to you, and I will protect you with my life. And that's what it's been.
Yes, it is. Probably didn't expect quite that. Yeah. Probably didn't quite expect the, what you were going to have to fight. But
No, I had no idea. No idea.
But I'm glad that you still do date nights, and I'm glad that you are happy, and I'm glad that y'all have found a way, your own way, to cope through this experience that you're living. Because I don't know anyone else, John, who has adapted to alien experiences, period, much less living with all of the, high strangeness. I know that Linda coined that term, but holy cats, it certainly applies here, right? I mean,
she and I have had some interesting discussions.
Well, I bet you have. And
Yep.
yeah, she's never
She's a
boring.
fan of the ranch. No,
Well,
she's a fan of the ranch. I mean, I've sat backstage at a couple of her deals, and she does absolutely wonderful presentations. Amazing. I mean, just the woman is so well researched, and the information is top notch. And she and I have had some great conversations because of that.
Well, there's a reason that she was an award-winning journalist before she got into the land of, odd.
Weird.
So,
yep.
Yes. In fact, she's one of the people in this field that I like the most too. She's just very professional, very straightforward, and she's just a nice human. So,
well, she's given her, she's really given her heart to this subject, and she can tell a phony from somebody who's straight, in 2 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
And it was, she contacted me and said, hey, could we get together? And that never happened when she asked originally, but at different conferences, I've had a chance to sit down with her, and it's been good experiences.
Well, she's a great conversationalist, and she cares.
Mm-hmm.
Two things that matter in my book a lot. Yours too. So.
Well, our story is so weird that, people have a real hard time. I mean, people in the paranormal field, are literally, I walk through a conference and talk to people, and a lot of these guys just look at me and shun me. They don't even want to talk to me. Because they just look at me. Yeah, they just shun me. I mean, they will not even acknowledge me because of the fact that the story is such a big story. It's kind of like it's an octopus. I mean, it's got so many arms and so many different things.
It does.
That people
Your story
just don't know how
is so
to cope
broad.
with it. Yeah, it's just, it's just so out there that, these guys that are the accountants, I call them the accountants in the paranormal world, they want everything to add up. All their information is, divided in 2 columns, right and left, and they have to balance at the end of it. And our story never balances. It never, makes no sense. It's absolutely horrific. It's bizarre. It is the worst possible example of anything that makes sense, but yet it's all true.
Well, and documented.
Yeah,
it's
it is
true.
documented.
Yes. I mean, this isn't something that you just put out there randomly. This is fact. And
I could never make it up.
No, I don't think you could either. And I have a vivid imagination, and I don't think I ever could. It's just too much. And yet, there it is. I think that you have done
someday
the best
they'll make
anyone
a TV
could.
series out of it or something.
Well, I'll tell you what, it's just like Gene Roddenberry never even came up with that, right? And he was getting channeling, but in my opinion. But I am so glad that you have been here with me tonight. And I know there's a new book coming out in June about the ranch.
It's actually not about the ranch. I got to tell you that.
I thought it really was about the ranch.
No, it's not about the ranch, but it has. Okay, this is. Bruce has gotten together with a gentleman that has access to the Akashic record.
Okay. Yes.
And the weird thing about it is that indirectly it is very much related to situations that are similar to the ranch. And so the ranch plays a part in it. But I'm friends with Bruce, and he sent me an advance copy of it. It's a great book. Anything Bruce writes is awesome. Everybody should buy all his books. I mean,
there are several to choose from.
Yeah, and they're just incredible. I mean, if you really want to get in the head of somebody who gets it, who understands, who has been all over the world, Bruce is the guy. And I was fortunate enough, to meet him and know him and to have him work with me and kind of, honestly, he's been like a professional coach in terms of helping me to, pull my head out and try to put some perspective to this whole thing. And so, his new book that's coming out tentatively June 15th, I can't even tell you the name of it right now because I don't remember, but look him up on Amazon. And get ready because it's going to be just amazing.
And that is Bruce McDonald with the Mac, M-A-C spelled out, McDonald. So
right, exactly.
If you put the MC, you're not going to find him.
No. And the interesting thing, and that is that the information that's coming out through this book is going to set the paranormal world on its ear.
I can't wait.
It's nothing like anybody's seen before. It's very well documented. It's what's coming out now. It's like interdimensional. We're turning the corner here, and we're going to start understanding things in a much, much bigger perspective. All the things that I've been saying about the fact that the Stardust Ranch story brings in so many different angles and so many different topics and so many different experiences, and it's being told through a first-person personal experience. This book makes the Stardust Ranch phenomena a part of that, but it's much, much bigger.
I cannot wait to get my hands on a copy. But tell people how to find you.
Well, you can reach me at, I'll give you an email if people want to ask questions.
Sure.
John Edmonds 411 at gmail.com. That's a personal email. You can always catch up with me on Facebook, as much as Facebook seems to kind of, at this point, curtail some of the things that come out.
Right.
They've been pretty good about letting me post stuff. So, you can always become a friend of the ranch. We do take donations for the horses and for the dogs and, whatever else happens to wander onto the property that we take care of and maintain as a sanctuary. You can actually send the donations to 14700 South Tuthill Road, Tuthill Road, Buckeye, Arizona, 85326. And Stardust Ranch is a real place, and it is what it is. We just, like I said, we've tried to take every lemon and make lemonade out of it.
Well, you've done a fairly good job, and I, for one, appreciate the daylights out of you doing your sanctuary because I think that is so important. Everybody needs an advocate.
Every time I look in the eyes of these horses and I look in the eyes of the dogs, I see their love and their appreciation.
Yep.
And, anything that runs away from home around any place within 5 miles of this ranch, it always comes here. People come all the time and say, I lost this dog or I lost this cat or whatever. And they're like, have you seen it? And 9 out of 10 times we have.
Perfect. Even the animals know and are fearless of the other things there.
Well, I don't know what it is, but they always come here. We're like one of the only water sources within 10 or 15 miles, because of the horse waters for the horses, and everything comes here to get water.
There you go. That's a good thing. Well, we are a little over, and I don't even care because this has been fantastic. So thank you again. I am looking forward to getting a chance to talk to Bruce, and I will have to promise that I will call him Bruce, unless he really likes Brian. But and I would like to discuss the the dimensionality that he's going to be covering in that book with you once I get my hands on it. So maybe we can schedule another show soon and go into some of that.
Yeah, I'm happy to. What you should, in my opinion, you should schedule a show with Bruce.
I am going to do my best. If he'll still speak to me after, renaming him. But
he's got a good sense of humor. He'll get over it.
Well, thank you so much. I have had a great time with you. And for all our listeners out there, I'm going to do it. The times are tough. There's no lie about that. There are, attitudes, and life is kind of shifting and changing, and we're dealing something that we've never dealt with before with the virus, and then now nobody will go to work, and so businesses are going broke because of that too. And it's just crazy. These times we're living in right now, they're just a little crazy. So if you're having a hard time with that, right, John, you'll go with me on this, that you can actually manifest a change. You can, Sherry beat me to it, but you can be the change. That is what I try to do every day. I try to be, that person that I'll meet your eyes and I'll smile at you. I'll be the person that, if you're needing a chat, I'll listen. I'll be the person that can just, people are amazed I can keep my mouth shut that long, but I really can. So just be the change. Go out there and make a difference in your world, and you know what? You'll be the better for that because you're changing your own environment. So peace to all of you. Yes, go ahead.
I wish we had a couple of minutes for me to relate a story. Do we have a couple of minutes?
We'll take them.
I'll tell you a story. A long time ago, we broke down on the highway on I-10, headed west, coming home to the ranch. Mm-hmm. And there was a terrible, horrific accident. And it was late spring, so it was about 100, 102, 103 degrees here. And we were stranded on I-10. Nobody could move. Nobody could turn around for hours. And it was really interesting because this was just, a weird thing where nobody knew who they were driving next to or anything else, but we were all stranded there. And so we got out of our cars and we started meeting each other and talking. And the next thing you know, there's a whole group of us having like our own little conference right there in the middle of I-10, bunch of strangers. And we greeted each other and talked to each other and started hearing about each other's personal stories. And lo and behold, we actually were interacting with each other in a caring and meaningful, significant way. Just a bunch of strangers that had no idea right up until the time of that accident what happened.
Isn't that awesome? I love that.
Anybody can do it. Anybody can do it with anybody. All you have to do is care.
Yes. Yes, that's totally it. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. So I just can't tell you enough how much I appreciate you.
Well, thank you.
And all of you listening, because you know what? Bonus just for you. So thank you again. Go out there and rock your world. And you know what? Just love. Love and care and help. Everybody can do it.
Heart and reach out.
Yep. So I will see you next week. Same cat time, same cat channel. Y'all take care. Good night.
Good night.